Good afternoon and welcome to today's Director's Cut. We'll get started with Director Lynn Helms.
Thank you, Bethany. Thanks for stopping in, and those of you that have tuned in on our webcast. Appreciate your being here. We're talking about June 2023 numbers for the state of North Dakota, and all of the numbers are really good news. Noticeably, our number one competitor, New Mexico, actually had a 3% drop in production, whereas in North Dakota we saw a significant increase, 3% in oil and 3% in natural gas. So no increase in gas oil ratio, a little bit of a drop. So I'll kind of jump to the end and talk a little bit about gas capture. That did go down 1% for a large part of the state, although within Fort Berthold Reservation, it actually went up 1%. And again, I think what we're seeing is the migration of the drilling and completion activity out of the core and into the Tier 2 area, even somewhat out into the Tier 3 areas. And I think if you were at Mr. Helms' event earlier in the week or late last week, you also heard comments from him that a lot of that Tier 2 acreage with the newer drilling and completion technologies is now performing like Tier 1 acreage. So we're seeing very stagnant, I guess you would say, activity within the core area. In fact, only 4 rigs operating on Fort Berthold Reservation, which is kind of the core, as opposed to moving out into the Tier 2 area. And that reflects itself in a nice production increase, but also a flat gas oil ratio. And there's going to be a little bit of a struggle to maintain gas capture as infrastructure has to now start keeping up. The infrastructure was really built up within the core area, but now we're out further from the gas processing facilities, and so more infrastructure is going to have to be built. However, back to the theme, really nice to see 3% month-over-month increases. Also, new all-time high in terms of the gas capture volume. So significantly over 3 BCF a day was captured and put to market. You'll notice that the period of low oil prices has left us. And so in May and June, we were below revenue forecast numbers for oil prices, but we're well above them now. And did a little research in that area. The information, or the Energy Information Agency, I should say, has looked at world demand, and world oil demand is at an all-time high, 103 million barrels of oil a day in June. Supply, however, went down. It dropped 900,000 barrels a day. So we're actually in a situation now where demand is exceeding supply, and you're seeing that in the oil prices. Looking at the Fed, they do a survey of oil and gas operators, and we're right in the sweet spot, I guess you would say. Oil and gas operators said if oil WTI was to drop below $63 a barrel, they would reduce drilling and completions. If it went over 86, they would significantly increase. So we're in the 80s, which means slow growth. And that's been the story in North Dakota for some time, but you're seeing it in all the basins. So things are well aligned. We saw, as we thought we would, a rig count increase of 4. It takes 60 to 70 completions a month to hold production flat. We saw 83 in July and 85 in June. So next month we ought to be reporting another production increase. Looking forward to that. We saw wells waiting on completion go down, so the DUC well count is coming down, and that also is reflected with 22 frac crews operating today. So they're able to more than keep up with 41 drilling rigs. And kind of turning to all-time highs or records, we have a record number of active producing wells, over 18,000. That's the first time we've seen that. So we've never been over 18,000 active producing wells in the state of North Dakota before. So we're setting a number of records in our June numbers. And then on the IIJA front, where we're plugging orphan wells. We're now at 54 out of 93 at the end of July. We think that the plugging portion of that grant, that initial grant, will be completed by Labor Day, but we'll continue on with the reclamation side of it through Halloween if the weather holds out. And that's typically the end of the weather cycle for that. Kind of already touched on gas capture. One other thing I want to talk about that puts pressure on that is the low natural gas prices. Natural gas prices are well below what the Fed survey said it would take to sustain gas drilling. We're at $2.33 for gas going into northern border at Watford City today. And so that also puts pressure on our gas capture, because that's below the numbers that it would take to really actively build new infrastructure. So low natural gas prices, high oil prices, and drilling in the tier 2 areas, all is going to put pressure on those gas capture numbers. One bit of good news in the gas capture area is that Charleston Field finally got to the Industrial Commission's, I guess you'd say the gas capture goal of 91%. So they have been gradually working in Charleston Field to get there. So that leaves us with just 2 significant fields that are significantly below the Commission's gas capture goals. I think one of the things of biggest concern is the all of government federal fire hose. And so as the industry is firing up with $80+ crude oil, we are facing Bureau of Land Management leasing rule modification. The CEQ is out with a new NEPA rule. The EPA is out with their greenhouse gas rule. PHMSA getting into the act. They're the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Agency, and so they're supposed to look at pipeline safety, but they've written a rule that involves LDAR and methane emissions. So even the Pipeline Safety Organization is in the act, and now U.S. Fish and Wildlife is modifying the Endangered Species Act. So in terms of oil and gas, we're working on no less than 5 active rule revisions and trying to get comments put in and looking at what we can do. All of these have significant downside for oil and gas production. And so a major concern there, and we're into that season in an administration when that really starts to happen. So positive news in the numbers, really a good month in June as far as the numbers go, and a large part of what we'll be doing between now and Halloween is going to be working on all of these federal rulemakings, and so you'll hear a lot about that at the Industrial Commission meetings. We did get a couple of questions that came in over the web, so maybe we'll take one of those on. The first one deals with the Summit Carbon Solutions CO2 pipeline, and they're asking what I think about the decision. I'm not really going to comment on that. That's in the Public Service Commission's realm and their statewide elected officials. But I should comment on what it means for CCS development in North Dakota in the near term and then in the future. So in terms of carbon capture and storage in the near term, the bulk of our projects are located very, very close to the sources. So when you look at Project Tundra, when you look at Coal Creek, Dakota Gas, all of those are very short pipelines that don't involve much, if any, PSC transmission line approval. So I guess we're blessed in that the geology immediately under and around our coal-fired generation and our natural gas generation, as well as natural gas processing, they sit right on top of the geology. So this decision in the near term, really no significant impact. Now, when you think about the longer term, and I've talked about this a great deal, our CO2 production only manages to meet 3 to 10% of the needs for enhanced oil recovery in North Dakota. So carbon dioxide has got to come to North Dakota from somewhere if we're going to stabilize and sustain Bakken oil production. So we've got to find a way for carbon capture and utilization to become a part of North Dakota's economy, or we will leave billions of barrels of oil in the ground. So not a great decision, I guess, in terms of the potential for problems with transportation of carbon dioxide to the Bakken oil field. And that is going to be really a driving force for us at Mineral Resources as well as for state government, because there are billions of barrels of oil at stake, and we'll have to see, what kind of proposals come down the line for that. We do have CO2 coming into the state from Wyoming into Bowman County, but it's a very short piece of that pipeline that's in Bowman County. So with regards to the decision and, what does Summit Carbon Solutions plan? They're going to have to start over with a new application. It was denied. And so unless they appeal this one, it's a start over, and that's a significant delay. But we have to find a way to bring carbon dioxide to the state from out of state for our enhanced oil recovery. So really, really important that we figure out how to build that infrastructure and to get it permitted. There was another question that came in about, is it yesterday's decision in Montana in the state court about the Montana, the constitutionality of what the legislature's been doing over there in terms of ESG and fossil fuels. To the best of my knowledge, that doesn't exist in our Constitution, but I think there are things in our Constitution that that could be used in cases like that. So this is a very serious thing, and our oil and gas industry, as well as the Industrial Commission, are going to have to pay close attention to that decision, and as well as the legislature is, and think about what the policy should look like going forward for North Dakota. Again, the majority of our economy is driven by fossil fuels, and by the second area is agriculture. So we can ill afford a decision like that that's going to upend North Dakota policies in terms of fossil fuel energy production. So with that, we'll take some additional questions.
Will the Summit decision have any impact on a storage facility? Doesn't DMR handle that?
Yeah, great question. So the question in the room, will that Summit decision have an impact on storage facilities? And we had received a draft application for 3 storage facilities that were going to store the carbon dioxide that was going to come in from that pipeline. And so we regulate that area. Undoubtedly, that's going to be postponed. Now, we were looking down the barrel of a dozen storage facility applications. So we'll have plenty to do, but those 3 large storage facilities will be delayed or postponed as a result of that decision.
Oh.
Yeah, keep going.
So I saw that the Dakota hearing, the DCC West project, I think it was, is back on the docket. What happened with that back in June? I thought that was supposed to be, or the hearing took place back then.
Yeah, so DCC West, the question from in the room, DCC West is back on the docket, and I'm trying to remember what the issue was. Okay, so it was a publication issue. Thank you, Bethany. Yeah, it got advertised in the wrong county.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it was just an advertising issue. So we held the hearing, and we'll be taking a decision to the commission within the next month or two with regards to that hearing. But the reason it was back on the docket was a publication problem, and North Dakota has very robust open records and publication laws, and they all have to be complied with. So sometimes that causes a delay. But that project, it kind of has dual purpose for Milton Young, if carbon capture is put on